And now it's time for the Insiders with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and Michael Best Strategies.
Hi, I'm Scott Jensen, former Assembly Speaker.
And I'm Chuck Chvala, former Senate Majority Leader.
And this is the Insiders. And the long-standing saga of Justice Gableman and his elections investigation appears finally to have come to an end, Chuck. What sort of lessons do you think we've learned from the investigation?
Well, the taxpayers lost $1 million because nothing came out of that investigation. It was amazing if you got to watch the video of Gableman appearing before the judge. His performance as a judge in front of another judge was unbelievable. But I'll tell you what, here's the biggest takeaway in my view. This is the canary in the coal mine as to how you lose democracy. Robin Vos is one of the most powerful speakers of the Assembly ever. He's been in longer than anybody else as Speaker of the Assembly. Robin Vos could not stop having to appoint a guy he knew was incompetent and he knew would not do any decent job. Why? Because Donald Trump insisted that he do something related to the election. And even after he did that, Trump endorsed his opponent, Gableman endorsed his opponent, and they almost beat the Speaker of the Assembly. The message isn't what's the lesson that you and I are learning. The message is, what do those politicians out there who see the Gableman performance happen? I'll tell you the lesson that they take away. Don't ever stand in the way of an authoritarian or they will take you down if you're on the Republican side. This is a very dangerous canary in the coal mine, which shows us our democracy is thin and that we could lose. If Robin Vos faces this kind of problem and had to appoint a guy like Gableman and nearly lost his job anyway, that says we are on the edge. And are we seeing the sunset of democracy? I say we've got 2 elections to prove that we don't.
So I think we learned 3 things over the course of the last year or so during the course of this investigation. I think, first of all, I think people learned that elections are not necessarily uniformly conducted around the state. They're 99% about the same, but in certain communities, they do things one way, and other communities, we do it the other way because we have clerks who run it. Elections in Wisconsin are run at the local level, not necessarily at the state level. I think, secondly, we found that the state laws were either not always clear or that in some cases there were rules and just practices that had been developed over time that didn't agree with the law. So now we have courts overturning rules that were propounded by the Elections Commission or practices done by various clerks around the state. Unfortunately, that's probably causing some confusion here as we head into the elections, but you've got state courts overturning them and the federal courts saying, well, wait, we've got to do something different on absentee voters. You got to make sure you're taking care of the needs of disabled voters. So I think there's some confusion as a result of that. It's taking the courts way too long to sort of resolve these issues, which is unfortunate. But we learned that, the laws weren't clear and the rules weren't necessarily in concert with the laws. But third, I think the clearest lesson that was learned was that Justice Gableman was the wrong guy for this job. He started out as a former Supreme Court justice, as someone who was going to be a referee here and go through the evidence and come back with conclusions and recommendations. And along the way, he essentially became a partisan advocate. And that destroyed his credibility with regards to some legitimate issues that were uncovered during all of this. Those have now been washed away, or at least their importance has been diminished because the guy who found them went from being an independent referee to being a partisan, and that was unfortunate.
Let me just say one more thing. When one party says we want to figure out ways to keep the people who support the other party from voting, democracy is in danger. Folks, we're in danger. Just keep an eye on it.
I don't think that's what we're doing, but we spent enough time on Gableman. See you next week.
See you next time.
Listening to The Insiders with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and Michael Best Strategies.